We've got a lot to talk about. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I've got a hat on because this is California, it's very hot, and I have no hair. This is Apple Park behind me. I'm sitting at the top of the visitor centre at the moment, which is where the store is, but I've just spent the last 2-3 hours inside Apple Park for WWDC 2026. Firstly, my impressions of Apple Park. It is as bonkers as you would imagine. I've possibly like yourself, for the last few years, for the last, I think, nearly 10 years, I've watched WWDC, I've watched the iPhone launches, some of the Mac launches on my TV or on my computer, and it looks crazy on screen, but when you're there, it's just so big, it's so otherworldly, it's just, it's very hard to get across what that place is like. And I've done so many of these press trips, so many launches, and nothing has come close to this in terms of just the spectacle, really. However, we need to chat about two things. The first thing is just the kind of updates that Apple has made across the board, because I've picked out a few that I do like, and I think that they're definitely worth exploring. And then the AI side of things. Let's start with the updates to the operating systems. This has been, I always get this wrong if it's a TikTok, it's whatever it is, the more kind of mild update. So it's polishing, it's just improving things, it's adding certain new features in which on the surface may not seem that exciting, but are quite a big deal. There's one of those in a moment which I need to talk about. Overall, it's been a polishing year. The big news is AI, which I'll come on to in a moment, but let's just quickly go through the polishing, which I think is definitely interesting. By the way, I've got notes here because this has just happened. This is very much a first impressions video. Liquid glass, whatever you think of it, I do quite like it. I have liked it from the start. However, if you find it too translucent or just a bit too much, they're introducing a slider where you can have more liquid glass or less liquid glass, basically. That makes sense. I'm happy they've done that. They've worked on the speed of the operating systems as well, so apps open up to 30% faster, photos load 70% faster, and AirDrop can be up to 80% faster. That's a big thing for me. I've just transferred a whole bunch of photos and videos from this to my Mac, and sometimes it's quick, but other times it just takes a bit too long. So any improvements to AirDrop gets my vote. However, talking of smaller updates, which could quite easily get lost in all this, custom EQ for AirPods. This is such a big deal for me. I think it will be a big deal for my audience as well, because I review a lot of headphones, a lot of earbuds, and one of the most annoying things is that you can't, well, at the moment there's no EQ for AirPods. You get these kind of presets that you can choose from. There's no graphical equalizer, no band thing where you can choose different frequencies and boost them or reduce them. That's coming later this year when all of these, when iOS 27 goes live. I assume it's going to be in iPadOS as well, but regardless, it's there. That's a big deal. Let's talk about Siri. Today's sponsor has got me thinking about something that I've never really considered before about VPNs. When you use a regular one, you're not really hiding your activity, you're just moving who can see it. Your VPN provider can see both who you are and what sites you're visiting. You're trusting them not to do anything with that information, but the data can be leaked or requested. Obscura VPN is built differently, and I've been using it for the last few weeks. It physically cannot link your identity to your internet activity. Even if someone asked Obscura for your data, there's nothing there to hand over thanks to their unique two-party design. Its stealth protocol works in places where other VPNs get blocked. You can block trackers and malware, and the whole thing is open source. So if you're the sort of person who can check that for yourself, you can. It's currently available on iPhone, Mac, and Android. Best of all, to sign up, you don't even need an email address. Just click that link below for 25% off, or go to obscura.com/Mark and use code MARK at checkout, and you can get started right away. Obscura is my VPN of choice now. So we've got a new Siri. It's called Siri AI. It's partly in collaboration with Google. So we heard about this earlier in the year that Apple had struck up a partnership with Google, and in particular Google Gemini, to power Siri. However, we didn't really know what that meant back then, or how it would surface in each of the operating systems. But basically, it's giving us a brand new version of Siri, which is far more conversational. And although Apple didn't use this word a huge amount, it introduces agentic AI. And if you weren't aware, agentic AI is the ability to ask AI to do stuff for you, and it does that stuff. And it can do stuff across apps, it can do stuff, it can search for things in your mail, in your messages, and it's aware of context, it's aware of your life, what you do, where you've been. It's all done on device as well. There is also obviously the private cloud compute, so there is some stuff that can be done off device, but all the privacy first stuff, this is where Apple wins big time over a lot of the competition. Basically, they really take privacy very, very importantly. So that is built into this new Siri AI. We also have a dedicated Siri app, which is a pretty big deal because at the moment Siri is just this thing that appears when you call it. I really hope I'm not instigating all your Siris, by the way, but this new version is going to have its own dedicated app. And the great thing about that, I haven't tested any of this, by the way, so I'm making a lot of assumptions here. I need to update my thoughts once I've had time on, hands-on with the betas. But the great thing about that is that you can have conversations with Siri. And you can have ongoing conversations, and it's even aware of what's going on your screen. So if you're in a certain app, or if you've got a photo open of something, you can ask Siri what that photo is. You can say to it, and this is something we heard a couple of years ago, you could say to Siri, where's that place we went to with my brother Paul last week? And it's aware of any context around that question, as I mentioned earlier, throughout your apps and your messages, etc. There's also app actions. So in theory, it can take control of the app you're using and certain elements within that app, so you can ask it to do things and it can do that stuff for you in the apps. Now, we've heard this from other brands that have promised it, and either it has arrived or it hasn't arrived. The question I have with all of this, and it's the thing that has always troubled me with AI, and Apple referenced this, they made note of this during the keynote. I think it was Craig Federighi that said, this isn't him verbatim, by the way, but a lot of other manufacturers are kind of rushing towards AI functionality without any kind of understanding of why people might or might not want it. I'd love to know from you in the comments on this. Most of my friends, most of my family members don't use AI features. They just don't. If they do use AI, it's ChatGPT. They might occasionally use it in taking photos and videos and stuff, but even that is so rare. So the question I have for the new, I might have to ask Siri this, but the question that I have for the new Siri AI is, will it surface enough? Will it make itself interactive enough for people to discover it? That's the key thing. Every year for WWDC, or in fact any major software update for any platform, all these new features get added, but there's only a certain section of them or a certain group of them that get used consistently because they're either very useful, they've been requested for a long time, they've been missing for a long time, or they surface themselves regularly and naturally. That is the job of the new Siri AI. It has to surface itself in a way when you least expect it, or in a way that really benefits the thing that you're going through. Some of the other stuff they showed us was the ability for Siri to get involved in your messaging. So if you're messaging someone and they ask, how was your recent trip to Greece, it can surface the photos related to that trip and suggest which photos you might want to share with that person. Again, we've seen that suggested by other manufacturers. I haven't tested that stuff elsewhere because, like I say, quite often it just doesn't really seem to be there, or it's in beta form. Or in fairness, these new Siri AI features are arriving in beta form later this year, so we have to bear that in mind. But it does seem that Apple is coming good on that promise of a more agentic AI, a more useful Siri. And yes, it's 2 years down the line since all of that stuff was first announced, but I've been discussing this with a few people here this week, that no one was asking for this AI stuff. We weren't. None of us were asking for this. So the fact that it has either been delayed or it hasn't progressed at the speed that the speed that the market might expect it to, I don't think it's actually mattered for in fact, I know it hasn't mattered for regular users. And that is a challenge for Apple, for any brand making these devices. They've got to make AI useful and ensure that it surfaces itself, which is very hard to say, when you most need it, without you having to do anything. That's the key thing. The last thing to talk about on the subject of WWDC is the fact there was no hardware. So there were rumours that we might get the M5 versions of the Mac Mini and the Mac Studio. None of that. Does that matter? Not really. I think we'll probably see them later this year. We didn't see the rumoured HomePad, which is this theoretical HomePod with a screen. That would have been nice, but again, it's something which I guess if it is real, we'll see it later this year. So this was very much a kind of iterative polishing update overall for most of the operating systems, and then this big chunk of Siri AI. And I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it. I've got briefings and demonstrations and stuff over there over the next few days, and I will be making more content once I've had hands-on with it and got my head around what all this means. This is very much a first reaction, and it's your job now, guys, to get involved down below and tell me what you think, because Yeah, there's a lot to take in here, isn't there? Even though it wasn't a huge number of updates, this feels like a very big year for Apple and for these devices in general. Guys, this is where you come in now. I want to hear from you in the comments. What did you think about the announcements at WWDC this week? What are you looking forward to trying out yourself? Is there anything you were waiting for that didn't come? Or, you know, how do you feel about it in general? Get involved down below. And if you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you do, because there's going to be so many videos coming off the back of this. And, well, there's a lot more happening this year, which I'll be talking about. See you down there. This place is getting busy now, so I'm going to have to go. And there's a guy who's just put on his Vision Pro. I'm very impressed. Look at this guy. Look at that. He's got his Vision Pro on. That's impressive. Guys, I can only be in Silicon Valley, can't I?